It go crazy. It go crazy. It go crazy. Go crazy. Go crazy. Go crazy like a dumb dog. East side homeboy, where I come from. Dance on the floor till you go numb. No fighting, no hating, no red wrong. This is OOO City. All the way to the bay, hit the bass for me. Catch a case cause it's beating up your Chevy. Get you moving side to side, getting all sweaty. Make it work it out. Turn the volume up loud. It's a draw crowd. Make it all shout. Go crazy. All the way from the O to LA. Hit play on the track and I'm ready. Like a quarterback, Tom Brady. Get you all in the friends. Go crazy. Go crazy. Go crazy. All the way from the O to LA. Go crazy.
What's up? What's up? What is going on, Scoop Nation? It is that time for us to go ahead and get into these good topics. We have got this is our first Black History moment of 2021, is it not? Yes. Okay. So we are coming on back for 2021. We got Jameka coming back on this Tuesday. Plus, we have got a very special guest that we have been as hosts much anticipating because we've been following this king for quite some time and we know this information needs to be shared with our people. So if this is your first time tuning into the show, you have chosen an amazing night to tune in. You're going to get a full breadth of the reach of this here Scoop Nation. So we are so welcome that you're here. Again, if this is your first time, welcome. And I want to tell you a little bit about how we like to get down around these parts. The Scoop Show is a very interactive show. As you can see, we are live. We are sending emoticons. We are putting comments. We are wanting you to get involved, get in on this action, okay? We often say that you are our fourth, fifth, sixth, so on and so forth co-hosts. And to do that, we need you live and taking action in the place. So please go ahead and press that share button on this live stream so that your crew knows where you are for the next little bit, because you are going to be enthralled in this here conversation. Make sure you hit that button and then drop a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from. And at that point, you are officially locked in. In the meantime, when we are not on air, I encourage you to please follow us on our social media pages, which are on YouTube at The Scoop Show. We're also on Facebook at Real Scoop Show, and you can follow us on IG at Scoop Radio Show. So please, please, please be sure and lock in. Tell your friends and them, tell your mom and them, tell everybody. It's time to get on in here with The Scoop Show. Candace, how you doing, sis? How you doing?
Good, sis. What's up?
Over there with this color this evening. I love it.
This snowstorm got me. I had to put some pop to it today.
Yes, yes.
Pop to it.
I understand.
Hey, brother.
Mission accomplished.
What's going on, my sister? How are you?
Good. How was your week going so far?
So far, so good. I cannot complain at all. I was just telling you, my throat hurt a little bit, but I caught myself trying to preach yesterday. So that's and between that and the me trying to be cute going outside without the had to say,
to cover your neck.
Yes, had to cover your so but it's all good.
Taco meat out.
Yep, but that's all right. I got my tea that's gonna help me get it right. So I'm straight.
That's what's up.
How you doing, Q?
I'm good. I'm waking back up.
It's one of them naps, the afternoon naps. Listen.
Yeah, it was necessary today, and I'm not done. Let me say that much. Okay, I'm up, but not all the way up. So I know as soon as we log off, it'll be head to the pillow. We're done.
I'm all for it.
I don't think people understand how that is sometimes. Sometimes you just be like, good night.
Singing a little song, you gonna get my business goodbye. Good night.
Peace out.
Y'all don't know. I start kicking my shoes off, sliding that sock off underneath this desk.
Makeup wipes right here, like
child. Listen. But yeah, ready to get it in on this evening for sure.
That's what's up.
If y'all haven't hit the share button, y'all hit that share button as well. Again, start a watch party, invite your people. We got a really good show tonight. Really good show tonight. So a lot of things to talk about. So we flipping it a little bit in terms of the schedule. So y'all stick with us. But we here. So yeah. So first up, like Q said, this is our first Black History segment of the year. With Jameka B. Lewis, our favorite historian, our favorite librarian, our favorite I ain't gonna call it what I want to call it. That's for off the air. But that's my that's my sister. So we're gonna leave it at that so we don't get nobody in trouble. But anyway, tonight we're going to be talking. She got the 1776 report for us. If you guys have not heard of this, y'all are in for it. It's about to be dope. Y'all hold on, get your pen and paper ready. Mm-hmm. We about to get this. This is about to be good.
Hey, girl.
Oh, we can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
I'm reading your lips, man.
Can't hear you, babe. It's not just me. Okay, cool.
I'm mute yourself. We were both pressing on.
Say something.
Hello?
There you go.
Oh, I was like, it wouldn't let me unmute. I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. I was saying I haven't been with y'all in forever.
I know.
So it's good. I've been busy. Yeah, it's been madness. I want to know what Winfrey was going to say.
I was going to call our name that we call in private that we don't tell each other.
You might not need to know.
I'm just saying.
Oh, that we call each other?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you're more at risk in getting in trouble than me. Don't nobody want me. I'm real extra single out here. So
I'm trying to keep you from getting the hate mail. So
thank you, because we all know you are high in demand, Mr. Penn.
Here we go.
Yeah.
We go.
Candace, I hadn't actually met you like face to face, so it's nice to finally meet you.
Oh, nice to finally meet you. We always chat online. Okay. Hey.
We do. So let's get the 1776 report popping. Oh my gosh. Let me give a little background. So excuse me because my allergies are doing the fool. In 2019, the New York Times came out with a report called the 1619 Project. And it was pretty groundbreaking in that it covered and commemorated the 400 years since the first documented slave ships came to the United States in 1619. So the New York Times came out with this incredible report, and it was wonderful. That's all I can say about it. Quite a few school systems are using it as a blueprint for their curriculum when teaching how slavery actually affected American history and culture and the actual historical facts behind slavery. So the former administration, the Trump administration, decided they hated the 1619 Project they felt like it didn't paint America's founding in the best light. And so their response was to create a, a report called the 1776 report, which the goal was supposed to be to talk about the accurate history and founding of this country, and then it's supposed to talk about what are some of the barriers to progress in the United States. And again, excuse me, my allergies are acting up. So with this report came out again, as I mentioned before, it was commissioned by the Trump administration, and the, the original intent was for the report to take anywhere from 6 months to a year to be collected and put together and disseminated. They formed the commission for this report in November of 2020, and the report was released on Martin Luther King Day, 2021. So that was 2 months worth of work by this commission. The commission members, no one on the commission is known as or has credentials of a historian like myself. And unlike the creators of and contributors to the 1619 project, I mean, that was chock full of historians with valid credentials, journalists with historic background and everything like that. Unfortunately, and for some reason, the Trump administration couldn't find or didn't gather historians for this report. So, yeah. So for this segment, and I'm trying not to laugh because honestly, y'all, I've read through this report several times, and I try not to poo-poo on anyone else's intellectual work, but this is garbage, y'all. It is horrible. It is terrible. It is just, it's so full of lies, just outright lies, outright historical inaccuracies. I mean, it really reads like an ultra conservative, like homeschooling curriculum. It's just quite awful. So for my segment today, I wanted to discuss some of my favorite parts of this report that refer to Black history and what some of those inaccuracies are. And I want to give you the real deal, the actual truth behind some of these claims in the 1776 report. The first clue that this report was going to be quite interesting were the table of contents, the different headings. And so some of the headings in the table of contents are, again, pretty indicative of what you were going to get once you read it. It talks about, of course, the founding. There's the introduction. And then it talks about, so some of the headings are the meaning of the Declaration, meaning of the Declaration of Independence, a constitution of principles, challenges to America's principles. And some of those challenges are, according to this report, slavery, progressivism, fascism, communism, and racism and identity politics. The next heading is the task of national renewal. And in this one, it talks about the role of the family. Excuse me, y'all. Oh, my allergies just won't let me be great. Talks about the role of the family, teaching America, a scholarship of freedom, the American mind, and reverence for the laws. Oh, my goodness. So the things that I wanted to touch on are mainly in the slavery section of this report. And some of the more, what I found to be some of the more outrageous claims that are in this report. Before I hop into that, I want to mention that throughout this report, I guess they decided they wanted to have a little razzle dazzle, and they sprinkle quotes and pictures by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. These quotes are completely taken out of context, and it's just so much. And then Frederick Douglass, there's quotes and pictures of him, and it's almost like every white supremacist curriculum has to have a quota of how many Black people and what Black people they're going to quote. And so Frederick Douglass and Martin Luther King Jr. tend to be those two individuals that are included just for diversity's sake. It's almost like they are the historical tokens when it comes to white supremacist and racist literature. So I guess they figured, hey, let's sprinkle a little bit of, I don't even know what to call it, just a little bit of extra spice, and let us add some Martin Luther King and Frederick Douglass quotes. So when we get to the part in the report about slavery, as I was reading it, just from the very second paragraph, I knew this was going to be some mess. So I'm going to quote directly from the report. And it says, many Americans labor under the illusion that slavery was somehow a uniquely American evil. It is essential to insist at the outset that the institution be seen in a much broader perspective. It is very hard for people brought up in the comforts of modern America, in a time in which the idea that all human beings have inviolable rights and inherent dignity is almost taken for granted, to imagine the cruelties and enormities that were endemic in earlier times. And here's where it gets good. But the unfortunate fact is that the institution of slavery has been more the rule than the exception throughout human history. Now, here are the issues I have with that. Number one, while it is true that nearly every civilized, I don't want to say civilized, that every culture has participated in some form of slavery, it is well documented that American chattel slavery was completely different than any other form of slavery that has been documented and that occurred anywhere in the world. American chattel slavery had a measure of cruelty. It had a measure of it never ending, meaning if there was no way to freedom, there was no way that you could really purchase your freedom until much, much, much later, and it didn't happen very often. There was no indentured servitude, and contrary to what people say, the Irish did not have it worse. American chattel slavery was horrific on its own, and so to imply that American slavery was just kind of the norm, or that it was no different than what happened around the world, just isn't factual at all. So I was a bit taken aback when I read that part of the report. I was just like, no, we're not going to water down what American chattel slavery was and what the effects are still to this day. So the next couple of quotes that stood out to me, George Washington, and this is taken directly from the report. It says, George Washington owned slaves, but came to detest the practice and wished for, quote, a plan adopted for the abolition of it, unquote. By the end of his life, he freed all the slaves in his family estate. Is that true? No, it's not. The truth of the matter is, George, upon his death, in his will, he did make provisions for the slaves at Mount Vernon to be freed. However, only one person was freed. The other hundreds of slaves that were kept by his family were never freed. So to make that, to try to say that he freed slaves, when he died, it's not true. It's historically inaccurate. That's a falsehood. The next part talks about good old Thomas Jefferson. And it says Thomas Jefferson also held slaves, yet included in his original draft of the Declaration a strong condemnation of slavery, which was removed at the insistence of certain slave-holding delegates. Now, that part is actually true. He did make mention, if you read the original draft of the Declaration of Independence written by Thomas Jefferson, he does mention that there was a dislike for slavery. However, we also know through history and through historical record that Thomas Jefferson was not exactly a beacon of morality when it came to slaves, when it came to being a slaveholder. So to kind of paint him as this abolitionist when he was anything but, it's wrong. It's wrong to try to paint him as if he just hated slavery and he fought his whole life to the abolition of it. Not true at all. The next part, it says the First Continental Congress agreed to discontinue the slave trade and boycott other nations that engaged in it. And the Second Continental Congress reaffirmed this policy. The Northwest Ordinance, a pre-constitution law passed to govern the Western Territories and passed by the First Congress and signed into law by President Washington, explicitly banned slavery from those territories and from any states that might be organized there. So upon reading this, the average person would be like, oh, wow, the Continental Congress banned slavery. Great. Not exactly what happened. So the First Continental Congress did agree to banning certain parts of slavery. So the First Continental Congress did ban the importation of people of African descent into those states, those territories, that Northwest area, okay, or that Northeast area, excuse me. But that did not stop slave ships from coming to other parts of the East and definitely to the South. So, I mean, if this was your first time ever reading about slavery, you would think, oh, wow, pre-1776, the United States worked really hard to not import people from Africa. It's not true. They did ban the importation of people of African descent in those areas, but that did not ban the importation of people of African descent from the South, from the East, and from anywhere else. It's just, to me, it's just so wrong to continue trying to gloss over the horrifying things that happened during slavery. And I wanted to mention that at this time, when in 1776, there were about 500,000 slaves who had already been imported by then. And so trying to say, oh, we're going to ban the importation of people. Well, you already had, in the North, you already had maybe 350,000 slaves who are already there. So yeah, you could ban it, but that didn't stop you from selling people or shipping people down south or to other areas. So just reading that, I was just appalled at how this whole report just glosses over the horrific effects, the horrific things that actually happened as a result of the transatlantic slave trade in the United States. And so the last quote and the last part I want to talk about, which is, I guess, my favorite part of the slavery part of this report. And it reads, "The foundation of our republic planted the seeds of the death of slavery in America. The Declaration's unqualified proclamation of human equality flatly contradicted the existence of human bondage and, along with the Constitution's compromises understood in light of that proposition, set the stage for abolition. Indeed, the movement to abolish slavery that first began in the United States led the way in bringing about the end of legal slavery. It did not. This was written in the Declaration. Everything was written in 1776. Between the year 1770 and 1776, they were drafting these different articles and these different parts that would eventually become the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Many of us know that slavery didn't officially end until the end of the Civil War in 1865. So that was almost 100 years later. So it really took 100 years to abolish slavery in the United States. No. Please don't, if you ever read this, please don't believe that. Please don't believe that the founding fathers were these men who were adamantly against the treatment of enslaved peoples, and that they were adamantly working against having slavery in the United States. It's just not true at all. So I actually encourage everyone to read the 1776 report, because it gives you an idea of why our country, or why there are so many people in our country who are insistent on believing fake news, fake history. It really gives a good perspective as to why and how education and how different components of education are used in order to push certain agendas. Do not read it hoping to learn something new, because you won't. Further in the report, it talks about how the civil rights movement was one of the downfalls of American society. And it's like, oh. It also mentions, or it says, that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was against the civil rights movement as far as what some of the goals were, which were equal rights, especially for people of color, which we know is not true. So in conclusion, I'll just say that the 1776 report belongs in the biggest dumpster, and it should be set on fire and dropped in the deepest ocean possible, because it's terrible. Any questions? Oh, Q, you're muted. Oh, there you are. You're back.
Cool. It just got a delay for that mute for whatever reason. I think that was what you and Wynn were battling with.
Yeah.
Didn't President Biden remove this report from the website here recently? Wasn't this the one, because they had posted it on the White House website at some point, and one of the first things that he did was have that removed?
Absolutely.
Okay.
He sure did. Not only did he have this removed from the whitehouse.gov website, he decommissioned the 1776 commission itself. If you read up any rebuttals or anything that talks about this report, I mean, it's not often that you can get even right-wing historians to agree that something is terrible. A lot of right-wing historians agree that this is awful. Yeah. So for them to even come out and be like, yeah, this is really bad, just tells you how bad it is.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, this is bad. I read a little bit of it. It was pretty bad.
It is. And it's really disheartening that